Words I could share the recording with you guys later on. So the second, we've talked about the first phase of life cycle to be mounting, right? And the second part is what? Trigger. Trigger starts with this line here. And after this line, this is the next line again that trigger is waiting for. Do you agree with me? That is, this is where this is where a value can change. Whatever was inside this value before. So if it was 0 before, it will now transition from 0 to what? To 1. So it means that that trigger here, right? Whatever trigger that happens here, anytime so that should tell you and teach you now to know that trigger will happen in 2 points. There must be the first place where you use the use state hook, and there must be the second point where you set that state. Without those 2 things, your trigger is not going to be complete, except it is an effect, like something like this, which is what a use effect. Am I still communicating, please? So here, trigger, what are the 2 things that you're looking for trigger? The use state and the set what? The set of that state. And for the set of that state, now you need to pay attention for which kind of set are they working with. Are they working with the one that takes the callback, or are they working with one that just takes what? A value. Right. So, and again, trigger, by that name, by the English word trigger, what does it mean? It means it needs the user to do something, to press a button, or to what? To carry out a particular step. Sorry, I'm hitting. Sorry, I'm sorry. So it's like those 2 things are critical. I'm coming. Let me also respond to another. I'm supposed to be in another meeting now, but before the a meeting. Soon. I am all right. So I'm sorry. I needed to just respond to just some messages. So here, like I said, I'm trying to say that during trigger phase, 2 key things happen during trigger phase, which is what? This where use state happens, that's the number 1 pointer, and the second pointer is what? Set state. And the set state is, you have to be aware what kind of set state are they working with here, right? And then after trigger, what is the next part of what? The life cycle after trigger? Anybody? After trigger, what is the next part? Nobody wants to help me, but I'm going to help myself. There is a render. Is that correct? Can somebody bear me witness that that is correct? Can somebody use the comment and bear me witness that that is correct? Okay.
Yes, sir. Sorry, sir. I was
muted. So in the render, I mean, even by default, the first time your app shows for your user, render happens. True or false? Who agrees with me?
Yes, sir.
That the first time your app shows bang to your user, render happens. And that render, happens because your JSX is converted to what? A create element function, which is something similar to what? The MK function that I showed you guys. If you remember, this is the first point where React renders something. That is, React displays something for your user to see. Am I communicating? So
Yes, sir.
during this first initial render, you see your button here to be 0. When they now click, it causes a trigger. The trigger causes a set state. A set state causes the value of 0 to change to 1. As that value of 0 is changing to 1, you remember that there is a database, right? And we said
Yes,
in
sir.
React, in a component, our database is what? The state.
The state.
Right. So this database will now move from what? 0 to what? To 1. It means that as it has moved in the database now, React has to visually move the 0 that your user is seeing as well to change to 1. And that is where render comes in. React will do what? React will now carry out the following steps. 1, it will compare and contrast. It will compare, or something we call div, a git div. It will do a div. Why did I say git div? But it will do a div. That is a div of what were you before and what is the new thing that is coming. So what was it before? 0. What is the new thing that is coming? 1. So it will now see that, oh, by the virtue of what? JavaScript, that is text content. That is, it will now know that, oh, I just need to set the text content of my button from where? From 0 to 1. And that is the only thing that I need to change. I don't need to recreate the button. I don't need to recreate that element. No, I only take the text content and change it. And I said that process is possible because of the virtual DOM that React uses. React has a DOM that is virtual, that is not the real DOM. React will do the comparison and the adjustment of whatever update it needs to carry out inside the virtual DOM and now send that update to the main DOM. So that is the reason why people kind of think that React is somehow fast. Because it will not happen in the real DOM. It will happen in something called a virtual DOM. It will just swap 0 with 1. Does that make sense? So
Yes,
the
sir.
div, the comparison, and it will, if there is a paragraph here, let's say there is a span here, and there is click me, because this is a button, right? You agree that there can be a span here, right? Because this is a button. So it means that React is very smart to know that this span inside of this place does not need to change. Let's start, keep quiet. Jesus Christ. Keep quiet. That is in a meeting. Come play outside. Yes, thank you. So it knows that, oh, I don't need to touch this span at all because my trigger is not touching the span. My trigger only has business with what? Count. Hence, it is only count that is changing. React's diffing mechanism happens inside React Fiber or React work loop, which is like the internal thing that happens and make the whole thing happens there. It is the work loop, the fiber. The fiber is like a unit of work. So the unit of work is like the smallest thing that React needs to do. So it knows that the smallest thing I need to do here is I don't need to update span. I only need to change count. And that is how smart React is. It knows the exact thing that requires state update. And it is the exact thing that requires that state update that needs to change. And it is only that thing that changed that will be rendered. Does that rendering part make sense? Or do you have any question about the rendering part? Any question about the rendering part? Is it good? Okay, I want to see that as maybe a yes or something. Then the last part is what? The last part of this whole operation is what? Commit. That is a stamp and visual what? Visual UI what? UI update. A stamp and a visual update. That is that 0 that you're looking at now will now visually change in your presence to 1 as the user click the button. So maybe we should just run this code and see what it looks like in the browser. Should we? Should we run this code and see what it looks like in the browser? Let's see if I can save this. And let's see. Maybe. Or let's just do div -open. Think so. Let it div -open, and I should open my browser. And yeah, I think I have some UI. I have some UI errors that I've committed inside this old code base. This is not supposed to happen because this is an error here as well. Okay, so if you look at this now, can you see this button? Click me with 0.
Yes, sir.
So it means that if I click this button, right, what happened? What do you think is going to happen if I click the button?
It's going to change the number from 0 to 1.
But
Of
in
which the-
between that quick, that quick milliseconds thing that has happened, there's a mounting that has happened, right? There is a trigger, there is a render, and there's a commit, and that's what makes us the full life cycle of any React application. So even though this looks like a very small thing here that just happened, right? But this little tool that is changing right here is what they've gone through, different React processes. And so another way to look at this is to look at this here. So if you look at your button here, as I click here, as I click, you notice that it is not touching this span at all for any reason. The only line that is changing is this line 6. Did you observe that? And that is how
Yes, sir.
smart React is to change only the part that needs to be changed. It is smart enough to only change the part that needs to be changed. It is smart enough to change only the part that needs to be changed. Do you have any question or any further
No, sir.
question? Do you understand use effects though? Let me ask you personally, do you think you understand the use effect?
No, I don't understand this. The only thing I know how to use is use state.
All right, so anybody else here on the call too who wants me to talk about use effect? Let's see, maybe we can use our opportunity to talk about use effect. Use effect is a hook that accepts a function. So I can cut that function out and I can just put a function and dependency, or let's just say depend. The depend must be an array. That is, the default is to be an array like this, or an array that contains a state like this, or it can be group of states like this. I don't know if this makes sense to you. first the syntax of use effect. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And here you see that I am using a function declaration, but what you will see online on most of the tutorial or even in the documentation is you will see an arrow function. True or false?
Yes, sir.
So
Yes,
I
sir.
prefer the function declaration. Why? Because the function declaration always always make your function to have what? A name. But arrow functions by default, they don't have name. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
So even if you check it here, I think I have something here that should be doing some maybe I've changed it here. But if I call, I'm trying to look at the logs here. I think I wrote the logs here for use effect. Maybe I've deleted the log I did for use effect, but there should be a use effect log somewhere here. So the use effect log, the use effect here is, it will work if it's an arrow function. I only prefer this one here because of this name here. I want to be able to track this particular name. That's why I like to use a proper function declaration. I think let me wrap this in strict mode. Again, I wish there are many things I've taught you guys, but I've not taught you guys. There is strict mode in React. And you would have seen something like this, that when you clone your React from Vite, you will always see strict mode like this. How many of you have observed?
Yes, sir.
Right. So what this means is, let's try to write it this way. It can be what? We have React dot what? Strict mode. It's a component, and we also have this same thing here as well. I don't want to go to my IDE, but I mean, an IDE is going to be better than this one that I'm using, because I'm just using my terminal for this teaching, majorly just to.
Oh, this is your terminal.
Yeah, it's a kind of terminal that just makes it easy. I mean, if I open IDE will just be dragging and be slow and all that. So sometimes I just stay away from IDE terminal. I'll just try to stay on the terminal as much as possible. So if we save this and go to the app and refresh the app, you will notice that the warning that was on this app before is no longer there. Before, without that strict mode, there was a warning here. It was showing a red warning here. And
Yes,
now my React Dev tool can see component and can see the profiler they can work. So in the component, it is looking at my props and say, okay, you do not have any props. And it is saying that in your hooks, you have what? Two hooks in this component. One is what? A state, and one is what? A use effect. But the important thing is, beside the use effect, you can see that the name of my function is here.
Yes, sir.
So this is a major reason why I like to have my use effect to be a function declaration, as opposed to an arrow function. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
If we use that declaration, if we use the arrow function approach here, and we sort of just have it there, you would see now that it will just put it as a nameless function. But by making it a function declaration, it makes a lot of sense that way. Why is my undo not working? Oh God, these people want to kill me. Function update, update doc title, and then if we go back, we can see update doc title as our effect. And again, inside this effect now, the effect contains a function, and that function also has another function that is being returned. Have you seen something like this before?
No, sir.
So this is closure in JavaScript. How many of us have heard of the word closure before in JavaScript?
Yes, sir.
So you've heard closure, but you don't know closure. Okay.
And
So function add two numbers, right? And this is a function that had two numbers. We just return what? Maybe a plus what? Plus b. So it means that a plus b must be what? My parameter, right? Is this not a function? This is a function, right? And I can call this and say 2 and what? 4. But then if I bring this function here and say, okay, add 2, or maybe say add 4, add 4 to, let's just say add 4 to now. So what this means is what? It wants to take 4 and it wants to take a single number and add 4 to it, right? So it means that what? We can always what? And say maybe 4 will be here. Is this correct? Add 4 to what? Add 4 to something. So add 4 to 5 gives me 9. Do you agree with this function as well?
yes, sir.
Okay, but what if I want to make 4 a what? A variable. So I want to say add num to what? Add num to anything. So it means that what? Here, this one here, this 4 here must become a variable. And it must become a private variable. That's what it's going to be. So it must be what? A number inside of this place. Or it must be something that looks like this. Now let's just say something that looks like this. I can then return another function, and this function will now take that second number and say, oh, I can now do what? A return what now? Return inside of this place A plus what? B. Now the interesting thing here is that don't be confused. Don't let this confuse you at all. It is the fact that this one here, what did I just do? This here return here is just what? It's just like saying that instead of a function to return maybe a singular value, I decided that the function should also return what? Another function. I don't know whether you understand. You know, what we've
Yes, sir.
been doing before is just like you doing A plus what plus B, but we're not doing that. What to say, okay, return another function. So now, can somebody tell me how to call this function? Who's going to tell me? I need somebody to unmute and speak now. Hey, who's going to help me? And maybe somebody can tell me using
So
the
I can't
comment.
see.
Okay,
Can't see
here.
your screen.
Let's see. Yeah, let's see. Here. This function, if I want to call these functions here, how do I call this function? I know there is add num2, right? And the first thing is it's telling me that it's expecting something, which is to pass a hey. So let's say A is now like the 4, which is the first one. How do I pass the second B to it? I then have to call another one and say 5 like this. And the reason for this is because when you call 4 the first time, 4 will tell you that what I returned is another function. So when you call 4 like this, 4 will tell you that, oh, I am not supposed to console.log or display any value. I am just returning another function that you can also call again. And that new function that I'm returning, you need to also call me with another value. And that is where your closure comes in. I don't know if that makes any sense to you. So
Yes, sir.
what closure really refers to in JavaScript is that by default, this B variable here, this B, or majorly this function here, should not know anything about A, or this first function add number should not know anything about B. Because when you call add number the first time, B has not happened. I don't know if you agree with that truth, that by the time you are calling add, by the time you call add 4 here, add num here, let's say add num here, you only passed A here. Sorry, you only passed a value here, maybe 15. The second function has not even happened. The second function is just returned. It has not been called. The second function is just what returned. It has not been called. So it means that what to call the second function, you now have to pass this here. So why they call it closure is because of what? This 15 is a variable that this second thing should not be aware of. But because of that ability in JavaScript called closure, it knows and it is aware of this 15, and then it waits till it gets this 4 and it joins them together to make 19. So that closure is from the word called closed variable. That is, 15 is a closed variable. The second function should not know anything about 15. But because of JavaScript inbuilt behavior called closure, then 15 will now be a variable that is passed to that second function. I know I've taught some advanced things in this class here, but I know it's not too advanced for you guys to understand. Closures are just what? A function, the ability of a function to have access to a variable, a private variable. A private variable. In the real sense of this again, sorry, in the real sense of this, let's see. In the real sense of this, if you declare a variable here, let v equals to 10. Will this 10 be available outside of this function? Who can I access v outside of this place? Can I access v here? No, because v is only available within what? This particular scope. We call it scope in JavaScript. But the very interesting thing with JavaScript is that it is not only available to this add number too. It is also available to what? It's available to the second function that you are returning as well. So I can say a plus b plus what? Plus v. Naturally, it should not know anything about this v, because by the time this add number is called, v should have what? Been destroyed. But anytime JavaScript compiler sees this v, it sees v as a closed variable. So it will keep its value and pass its value and pass it to what? To this particular what? To this particular second function. And so here I can now call add num2 by saying what? 4 plus what? Plus 6. What will be this result? 10 plus what? 10, which will give me what? 20. And this whole behavior is what? A closure. Have I? So can we say closure is looping function? When you say looping, looping is like, I don't know how many times I'm going to be repeated. But in this scenario, we know that it can only be repeated only once. And when it's repeated, it is returning another function to be called. Does that make sense? So you don't want to use looping as that word. It is, call it the original thing that they designed it to be called, which is called what? Closures. Does that make sense? I know it is complex because it's the first time you're seeing that concept. I know. But again, the way I want you to remember it is that what? Just see it this like in a simple way that see it as, if I want to write the arrow function version of what I just wrote here now, I can say cost what? Add num to arrow. Now add num to arrow is equals to what? The first variable a, and then my arrow, which says now it's a function. I can now pass another b to it and say what? It is a function, and I can say what? A plus b. I like JavaScript though. I like JavaScript. So if you look at this now, this is very beautiful. It means that what? This expect you to pass a, which is what? 4, comma, and expect you to pass another what? 6 at the end of the day. And even if you want to make it 3, let's say we want to make it 3 now, we'll say what? C, right? And you say what? C. So the idea is that what? Each function is keeping, like it is keeping its value. That is, it's kept A so that B and C can have access to it. It kept what? A and B so that C can have access to it. It means that A, B here, they are close variable to this last function. That is, naturally you should not have access to them. But because of the feature in JavaScript called closures, it will keep them and call them closed variable and keep them in a place so that you can have access to them. I think I need to join a meeting now. But I don't know. Do you understand this closure thing? No.
Yes, sir.
So if anybody has any question with this closure thing, does anybody have any question with this closure thing? Yeah, somebody's pumping me with a question. Yeah, go ahead. I'm saying, yeah, you have permission to speak, please. Go ahead. You can unmute and speak.
All right, thank you, sir. Well, my question is based on this video. Now, seeing the possibility of like having two functions come together, is it possible that we return like after the logic for the first? Let's just say, okay, we're adding the first number for the first function. They will now return another thing that would probably like add another attribute. Is it attribute now? Add another like another function that will be different from the first function.
I mean,
Like now
again,
it will be returning two values.
that's why I wrote this particular word, this particular 3-1, this arrow one, to return 3 things, right? Because it's just the same concept. I'm using numbers because number is easy for you to wrap your head around. The adding of numbers is easy to wrap your head around. That's why I'm using this addition thing. But it's as the same thing as saying that to pass here, you have to pass me 2, right? What is the next thing you have to call? You have to pass me another number, and then you have to pass me another what number, and this is going to give me what 12. So it's the same thing as saying that what function what greet, and this function will what? You declare a variable inside of this greet, your name, which is what a closed variable here now, and say your name is what Abi so yeah, right? And then we end and we say, okay, this function should now return what? Another function, right? And this another function should also take what? Maybe another person's name or time or the duration, whether we are in the morning or we are in, do you understand? It can accept another variable v, right, and return it. But the key thing, explanation of closure here is that what? This name Abisoye here can be used on this line. Name can be used here. Naturally, you should not be able to, because I said what you should have discarded it because this is a new function. But because of the closure ability, yeah, so you can say what return, what return, maybe a string of what, a string with dollar what, maybe name, right, plus what, plus v. Or instead of doing this now, which is what your question was, instead of me returning a single value, I can go ahead and be stubborn and return another function. And say now, maybe Kabash has entered into the conversation. So we want to bring another person into this conversation. I mean, it's just very tricky, but it's still the same thing if you look at it.
Sir, I think maybe to understand better, we'll first look at it from the angle of scopes. I think if you can understand scope, you understand why closure is coming in, because normally we have different kind of scope. We have function scope, global scope, and the rest. And if you understand function scope, you know that how you can't access variables that are being defined in a function scope. So another function should not be able to access another function and
Exactly.
another variable.
Exact.
But
That
because
word.
of
That word I just said. Like, so greet here is the owner of what? Name. And this second one here should not have ability to access to name. But because of closure ability in JavaScript, JavaScript breaks that exception and keep that variable and say, okay, that variable will now be a closed variable that anything that is being returned can have access to. So this function here can have access to name, and this one here too can have access to name. But naturally, those variables were not created in their scope. The name variable was not created in their scope. I don't want to go deeper into JavaScript beyond this, but the thing is that yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
go ahead.
I think I understand the concept of scope and what you're trying to say concerning closure. But what I'm just trying to say is, let's take for example the example you just laid out now. You declare a variable name Abisoye, and then I'm saying, can we do something like after that declaration of name Abisoye, can we return a function that says, okay, let's say print or let's say alert the user to do welcome Abisoye? Then
Yeah.
now return another function inside that same greet function.
Yes, now because at the end of the day, now what you're just saying here is in between this place a lot, right? I mean, I need to go ahead and do its own business, and then it will still go ahead and allow us to be able to use name here to carry out whatever thing you want to carry out here, to return name plus what, plus v plus what, w, in a sense. I mean, it's console.log. Even if it's console.log, you can carry out console.log. Yeah, I mean, to carry out all of them here. So here is what? Greet. So how do we call greet here now? Greet. Greet is called with what? Nothing, right? And so it will return another thing that needs to be called with what? V. And I can say V is what? VEE right here. And if I call this now, it will return another function that needs to be called with what? W. And I can say what? W or W like this. Does this make sense to you? I'm saying. And
Yes,
so
I
when
do.
we call this now, so what you see here, so you see your alert normally, and then you see the console.log3, and then you see the end result of that function, which is what? The return of what? The plus of everybody. Does that make sense? Does that make sense to you? Does that clarify your question very well? The concern that you were trying to.
Not really, sir, because I was not actually using like alert in that alert sense. I'm using like a return. We are returning something like whenever
So
we call the function.
I mean, so when you look at it again, I mean, I'm returning here already. So the thing is, I'm already returning. So, if you're saying, can you return a lot like this here, then it's no longer a closure, because the key thing to closure, it means that it must return a function. And this also leads us to something you probably call or hear, or a pattern called what? Higher order function. HOF. It's a pattern. In this class, I've talked about many things. So there is patterns.dev. How many of you have seen this before? Patterns.dev. And then there is this pattern called what? There is this pattern called higher order pattern. If you see higher order, just let me know. The higher order. HOC. It is still the same thing as this HOC as well. It's similar to this higher order. It's a very interesting pattern, but it's similar to this higher order. This one is higher order component. That is a component that returns another component majorly. So here it's like a function here, right? Called with styles. It's called with a component, and then it's return. You can see that it's returning another arrow, and that arrow itself is what, like, it accepts a prop and it is returning another React component. So before you can access this with style, you need to call with style with a component, right, like this, and then it will now return another component that you can use. It's a pattern. That's why they call it a pattern in React. Anyways, it's a pattern. HOC, higher order, whatever. It's a very interesting pattern. And again, it's the reason why you have those patterns in React is composition. What is the meaning of composition? Composition means is a way to compose. That is a way to craft beautiful user interface. So instead of us having this kind of, instead of this tree like this, yeah, we can always use, that's where the advantage of all this beautiful composition comes into the place, right? It's very, very high order component in React. I think React documentation talks extensively about it, but like I said, it's not anything. I don't want you to see. The reason why I came here is for you to know this material, though. But it's a pattern in JavaScript. It's a very, very important pattern in JavaScript that a function can return another function, which is what? Which is behind the scene is your closure. And what led me to this conversation is the fact that what? This function update doc title is returning another function called what? Cleanup. Can you see that? That is the real deal that led me to that whole conversation. So in a use effect by default has what? A first function and what? Dependency. But inside that first function, you carry out the action you want to carry out as the effect, and then you can return another function. And that function that you are returning will be referred to as a cleanup function. So here I'm using a named function. So if I'm not using a named function, it can still be what? An arrow function. And here is a cleanup. So here it will only be called when React is cleaning up this effect. This function will be called when React is cleaning up the effect. When React runs this effect, React will run this effect anytime this count variable change. What will it do? It will set the doc title to the count and the latest count. So when you go back to my app that is running, you see that by default, my title has changed to what? Count colon what? 0. So if I increase my count, you see that instantly as my count is changing, my title is also changing. Do you see that? Instantly my count. So that is an effect in what? In your what? In your React, and that is what a use effect. I also warned you that you should not use effect to fetch what? Data. Did I say something like that? That yes, don't use your use effects to fetch data, because use effect is not built for fetching data. Prefer to use what? Transtack query, or to use SWR, or something specifically for fetching effect. If you check the React note as well, I think under data fetching, I have an example of ways to fetch data with what? Transtack query. Don't use effects to fetch data, because the reason is that it is not good. Use effect will only, like, your use effect is only called when your application has what? Rendered at least once. So it means that your API call will not start until your use effect has rendered at least once, and which is bad, because it means that your application will be slow by default. If you're using use effect to fetch your data, it means that your application would have rendered once before the data is available, before the data even starts fetching. So it's a poor pattern to use effects to fetch data. And recently on Cloudflare, somebody used use effect now to fetch data, and it was causing a DDoS on Cloudflare infrastructure. So use effect fetching data is a bad pattern in React.
Okay, so can you hear me?
I can hear you.
So should we always should use effect always return a function like closure? Should we always return a function?
So it's up to you. The advice in the documentation to always have a cleanup, that is, this return thing should always be there, so that in case React will always do the clean. It's just like when somebody dirties the house, they see this one line 10 as somebody dirtying the house. And the reason why they see it as somebody dirtying the house is because this document.update title is not a natural thing that React should do. Because React is only working within a div called root. And it is going outside and manipulate the whole document. Now, the title of the document is going into the head to manipulate the head. So they see it as what? A dirty operation. So they believe that what? If this dirty operation now needs to be cleaned up, there must be a way to clean it up, so that React will not run into something called a memory leak.
So so the cleanup is just like in case there is an error, like use this.
In case this effect happens. So by default, anytime you use effect, that is, you want an effect to happen. So they believe that effect itself is a dirty thing. It's a dirty operation. So they believe you must always sweep your house before you step out of the house. And that's why your cleanup must be there. Do you understand? So even though you can write it without this return and it will work fine, but when your application is now doing something big, it will cause memory leak.
Okay.
That is, when it is supposed to clean up this effect, it will not see any function to clean up. So it will exact what? A lot of memory consumption on your computer to clean that whole thing up itself by default. And anytime your React on mount, because now if React on mount, that is when React destroys this. So if I refresh this application, what happens? Everything goes back to zero. Everything goes back to zero. Right? You did not see what happened. If I had a console.log here, you will know that what this line was called. Console.log was called. You won't know, but it happens so very, very fast. Like it will happen so very fast that you will not really pay attention to it. So if you do, so you can see now that in between the refresh, you can see what's called happened here, right? So that is the advantage, that anytime somebody does an effect, we believe it's dirty. So there must be a place for us to clean that dirty thing up. But it is only called when this app unmounts itself. It is only called, this dirty cleanup right here is only called when this app unmounts. And an example of unmount is me refreshing. And what happens when I refresh? That is, React will discard this page will discard the whole application and re-renders it back and try to re-renders everything. And that's what cleanup is all about. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
And another very interesting question that somebody should ask me is that what if this is an empty array? What happens? So if this is an empty array, this effect will only run once. That is when your app mounts. So if I click this, you notice that my title is not changing. Can you observe that?
Yes,
That is, it means that the effect is not running. Why? Because the dependency is empty. That is, it will only run once when the application mounts. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
So if I want to really break down use effect for you in a simple way, syntax is the first thing. Do you know the syntax of use effect?
Yes, sir.
Do you know what it is doing, the effect, right? And then do you know how to use the clean up? And then can you now use the dependency array? That is, what is the work when it is empty array? What is the work when there is a state variable inside? And when you have more than one variable here, what happens? You should not put an object inside of this place. You should not put an object inside of dependency array. You should not put a function inside of this place. It should only be a proper variable. So if you have an object, you can do obj.value. right? Why? Because React is comparing using what? Object.is. Object.is. That's what React is using to compare. Right. So I don't want to go too much to the internal details of what React is using to compare, but the big thing there is that what? So these are the gauge, how to measure. Do you understand use effect? These are the gauges that you can use. Somebody wanted to ask me a question before I run away from this class.
Yes, sir, I want to ask you a question.
Mm.
So, when you were talking about the use effects, you said it's going to run like, but what if we are using it in like in a component? What if we are using it inside of a component instead of the app component?
I mean, this use effect too is inside the component. Your question is confusing me. This is also inside the component. What do you mean by using it inside the component? Come again. I don't get
Let's
it.
take for example a button. So we are using the use component inside of a button component. So is this still going to run once or like anytime we click the button?
You mean the effect, right? Or what? Is it the effect that you're referring to?
Yes, sir, I'm referring to this.
The what determines how many times the effect will run is what? The dependency. So it is not where it is being created. Does that make any sense to you?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
What determines how many times it will run is what? This dependency. When it is empty, I said it will run how many times? Once, right? If you are in strict mode, it will run twice, right? If you're in strict mode, it will run twice because React is trying to confirm that there is no error in your application, right? But by default, empty array like this, run it once. When there is what? A count like this, it means that anytime either this count or text changes, the effect will be refired. It means that what? It will clean up and refire again. It will clean up and refire again. It will clean up and refire again. So it means it will first call your cleanup function and redo the effect. Do you understand the order now? So anytime either count or text change, if they are state variable, it means that what? It will what? Run the cleanup first and it will run the effect. So it's like it will first clean the house here and dirty it again. So anytime it needs to discard again, it will what? Clean the house and dirty it again. Clean the house and dirty it again. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? The person who asked the question.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Thank you, sir.
I think use effect should make sense now to as many persons that are on this call. Do we have anybody with a very direct question? Or I should run to my meeting?
Okay.
So
what?
go on.
So where do we use? Where do we use? I have two questions, sir. Where do we use effects, and like what situations do we use effect? And the second question is actually not related to everything. Is coming up? How do you like when you encounter problems in JavaScript? How do you come up with logics? Because I think one thing I've discovered in JavaScript is that most everything is about logic, right? How do you come up with logic? Like I understand you need to know something first and all of that, but if you know these things, then like how do you approach some certain problems? Because you might know something and how to attack a particular problem. You might see a problem that might be easy, but you don't know how to attack. I don't know, but I just felt like I should ask the question.
Let me
How do you come up?
give you an example. How do you know that you're supposed to ask me this question? Do you understand? It's just like because you need the knowledge so that it will help you to know how to also solve problem. Do you get what I'm saying? Like, how did you know that you need to ask me the particular question you're asking me? It's because you want the knowledge, and so you decided to ask the knowledge. So the same way with this logic means that if you solve problem A today, in a way, even though it is increase and decrease, because let's say, for example, now this particular component here, we want to add increment and decrement to this thing here. So I can say what const what inc, right, is equals to what this, right, and what it will carry out inc. And I can say what const decrease now is what this and what carry out what this here. And the simple thing is what is just to copy whatever is here and what and put here, right? And one is going to be what negative and one is going to be positive. Do you agree with me?
Yes, sir.
And so this is because I've done this before and I've done this a countless number of times. Problem solving is about what you see and do every now and then. And that's why when you come to my class and just listen to me and you think you understand, you did not understand. You only understood me when you have tried to solve a problem with what the knowledge you gain from my class. The failure to try to approach your day-to-day life or the day-to-day encounter with the knowledge you are gaining, you are not learning anything. What am I trying to say here? You are only as good as the problem that you have encountered. We developers, we are only as smart as the developer, as the problems that we have seen. So if you want to now know how to apply different logics in different situations, then it means you need to see a wide variety of scope of problems. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
So it means that there's no sleep for the wicked. Technically, I'm not saying you're wicked though, but you know what to do, right? You just get your head down and try to. For example, now let's say I give you a app that what has an input or a text area. A text area, text. I'm supposed to join a meeting. They would have finished this meeting before I joined there. I missed last week. Now I'm missing this. Is this spelling of text area? Is it spelling of text area? I'm not
Yes,
sure.
sir.
So let's say help here. If I ask somebody here in this call here and say, create this text area like this, and try to do it in a way where if somebody writes markdown here, right, you will create another React application that will display the result of this markdown beside it. So it means that technically, as I'm even saying it now, you need what? You need two things in that app. It needs the text area and it needs what? The display, right?
Yes, sir.
That is markdown to what? Markdown to what? Markdown to what? HTML. And now you'll be asking yourself now in this place now, what will you use to display HTML here? So can you have a div here and pass HTML like this to React? React will not agree. You can't put HTML here, right? Because with the things that you can put here is just like JavaScript variables, JavaScript value, not HTML. The only way to do this in React is to do something called what? I don't know if anybody has seen this before. There is an underscore dangerously HTML, dangerously set HTML. I think there's an API called dangerously set HTML, but you will not know that this exists if you don't research. Yeah, that's the baseline. Teaching is very, very smooth. So must style and CSS and JavaScript be in React.js? Sam, must the Figma picture be the same as shown in React.js? I don't. Manuel, why are you asking me a question like this? Sir, you don't need to put sir, don't worry. Must the Figma picture be the same as shown in React? I don't know. I mean, you can download picture from a Figma, so I don't think that's any big deal. Then must CSS and this be in React.js? I mean, I taught you a class that talks about different ways to style React. So whether you want to use your normal inline styles, whether you want to use your Tailwind, or whether you want to use your style, what's it called now? Style sheet, what's it called now? Different things, CSS module, right? There are different ways to style. So it depends on which particular one and you can also do .import.css and leverage on your class. So I think all those approach we've talked about those approach. Did we not talk about those approach? I think we talked about it. I didn't just go deeper, but
Yes.
on the surface, I sort of just gave us like different approaches to styling within your React context, and much more. You can also research more to get different ways or means to do that. So with this thing, I was just trying to solve here now. So it means that if you have not heard this one before now, you will not even know what to do, right? And if you search for dangerously set what? Set HTML React. So there is the API that dangerously set what? Okay, I think it's dangerously set what in our HTML. And then we can what? We can look at it. It's there, the dangerously set here. So look at it here. Dangerously set here, and the exact same thing that I'm trying to do is what this example in React that they are doing already. That is, you have what? You have a application here that will take Markdown, and you will use it and display back what React. So honestly, you need to research and you need to read docs. Docs. I don't go ahead and watch YouTube video, maybe because I can create YouTube video myself. I mean, to hell with like, I don't just want to be proud and say I don't watch YouTube videos. I still watch YouTube videos a lot, but I'm just telling you that you can't just rely on just watching other people do something without you trying your best to know how something eventually what works. So this is what I'm saying here. If I give you this kind of thing here now, so anybody who has seen this in the documentation can just use this now as a starting point to solve the problem. You need to research wide. You need to research wide. And I think it should also allow us to, I think Markdowns are very powerful. I don't know if you have written Markdown on GitHub in your README before, you know that Markdown can accept image, can accept videos, can accept even code. If you have seen some of them before, they can accept code.
Yes, sir.
So if you look at this one now, you can see it's writing it like code now. Console.log 2 + 2. So again, it's as powerful as this. Again, what led me to this is that the problem scope that you keep seeing will determine what you can see. And so if you are the type that, yeah, you're busy and you're just only feeding yourself based on what we are teaching alone in class, you will only be good for class, but you'll never be good to be a React developer. Right. So the idea again is that I can only teach you what I can teach you. At the end of the day, you will still need to be able to research and read documentation on your own to be able to stand alone on your own. So to your answer to your question is how much you see is what you know. So you don't sleep. You don't sleep. You keep working hard, right? Till you are able to what? Till you're able to solve as many problems as possible. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
I know. Again, for the first
sir.
question you asked that how to know when to use effect. This is my answer. I won't bother to explain, but I think I'll just put you to read this. So let me see what you can come up with. And this particular example of dangerously set HTML, please don't sleep on this as well, because it is very important. All right. Any question for me? I will be available tomorrow as well. This same, I think around maybe 6 p.m. to like 8 p.m. Nigerian time. Anybody just join the call, you ask me questions based on what I've taught, what I've taken you guys. I'll break it down into like simpler, smaller concepts, and then I'll be here. So for those who are able to join, thank you for joining, and I'll see you some other time. All right.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much for your time, sir.
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
yeah, I'll try to share the recording with with you and see if you can. Yeah. Then you can help me send this URL as well to the WhatsApp, these two URLs to the WhatsApp, and to the community hub as well. Please do that for me.
Okay, sir.
Yeah, thank you. All right.